Welcome to the Global Connection, a Tel Aviv University podcast. Journey with us as we discover how TAU's academic community and friends are engaging with and helping to shape this ever-changing world. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Global Connection. Today in the studio with me is Dr. Uri Binjamin Rom, who is a musicologist, composer, conductor, a former instructor of orchestral conducting at the Berlin University of the Arts, and a lecturer on music at Tel Aviv University. Uri completed his PhD at the Technical University of Berlin on tonality in Mozart's works. He has completed, published, and recorded many musical pieces, including completing fragments by Mozart, an oboe concerto in the style of Venetian Baroque, and a musical adaptation of Dante's La Vita Nuova. Now, Dr. Rom also happens to be the head of the Buchmann-Mehta School of Music, which is one of the liveliest schools on TAU's campus. In fact, the school is now celebrating 20 years of giving and hosting concerts and lectures. Right. And on that musical note, welcome, Uri.
Thanks so much, Anna, for this introduction and for inviting me here to this podcast. It's really fun talking about our music school. So you said just happens to be the head of the school. I think for me the most important point was coming back to Tel Aviv to teach at this very, very prestigious music school, which I know in the form of the Music Academy. That's actually where I grew up. And the Music Academy Tel Aviv was the former phase. In that phase, it was actually founded in 1945 by immigrants from Central Europe. And actually the same people who founded the IPO, the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra, were also the first generation of tutors and professors of music at this music academy, which wandered around about Tel Aviv. There are many details I'm not going to enter into. We're on campus since, if I'm not mistaken, 1966.
Okay.
And I started my music studies and did them in the early 90s.
Okay.
And the professors I was fortunate to study with, people like Noam Sharif, the conductor and composer, the composer and theorist Yitzhak Sadai, and the composer and architect Ami Mayani, who actually built our concert hall, designed our current concert hall, the Clermont Hall, were among my professors. And just stepping into their shoes felt so awesome. So when I came after, nearly 18 years abroad, I mainly spent time in Berlin. As you said, I taught orchestral conducting at Berlin Universität der Künste, this West Berlin School of Music. This was a huge chance, a fulfilling of a long-standing dream to come back home and just belong to this faculty.
Okay. I would say you're probably a pretty good fit then to be head of the School of Music and
Thanks.
giving
it's a daily effort. It's a daily, because this is such a complex school. We'll do lots of productions. You just mentioned our concert series. We have one of our main assets is the BMSM, the Buchmann-Mehta School of Music Symphony Orchestra. Mm-hmm. And in fact, what happened is that while I was abroad, I just heard it from far off, and there were these times of crisis in the noughties, the financial crisis, and the Music Academy was really endangered. And that's where Maestro Zubin Mehta, who is our current honorary president, stepped in and brought with him his staunch friend, that's the Joseph Buchmann of Frankfurt, the philanthropist, and together they forged this concept. And that's the point where we became a school of music, which is really full of adventures and so many different departments and doing all sorts of productions. But the main asset, I'd say, that's really the symphony orchestra.
Okay.
And our symphony or orchestral training program. We are working very close with the IPO. That's part of this pact which was forged at that time.
The Israel Philharmonic Orchestra.
And their people are teaching at our place. For instance, the flute department is actually one person. That's Guy Eshed. That's the principal flautist of the IPO.
Okay.
And the principal oboist, Dudu Carmel, and all the rest of them. Of course, we have our own professors. For instance, you need a larger strings department. So these are people who are really situated on campus, that their professorships are at the Buchmann-Mehta, like Hillel Tzori, that's the head of our strings department, and Chagai Shacham, head of the violin class, and et cetera, et cetera. But, the symphony orchestra is fortunate enough to perform once a year at the Bronfman Auditorium. That's part of our agreement with the IPO. That's their house, actually. That's their home. And we have this festive gala concert every year. Just save the date. It's 11th April upcoming for our upcoming gala concert with Brahms and Chopin First Piano Concerto.
Okay.
So that's really performing at Israel's foremost concert venue.
Okay. Well, I am well aware that you have lots going on, and you've always had a lot of wonderful, renowned musicians who join you for a period, and also, as you mentioned, who are working in the School of Music as well. So, you could, depending on how you look at it, you can go back to 1966, you can go back to the 1990s. You've been with the School of Music for a little while now. So for you, what are some of the most notable events and accomplishments from that time?
Yes. Well, it's hard to count them because there's so many peaks, So, I just mentioned our annual gala concert. That was definitely the peak of the achievements of the orchestra yearly. We've been doing this with Maestro Zubin Mehta, our honorary president, but in the past 3 years, 4 years actually, including the Corona period, the COVID period, that's where Lav Shani, the successor of Zubin Mehta, stepped in. Maestro Lav Shani, who is now designed to go to conduct the Munich Philharmonic. So he's one of the rising stars on the skies of conducting careers. He's our staunch friend. We actually communicate every few months. He's visiting us very often when he's in Israel.
Okay.
And so working with Lav Shani, I would say, is definitely also personally a very important part of this and a very wonderful asset of this position. Just working with one of the grandest musicians nowadays, and who manages to fascinate the young generation. People just, look to him and realize whatever he wants, and he wants a lot. He's very exacting. There is not one phrase he doesn't work on until he's really satisfied. Maybe we would like to hear a little from our gala concert of 2 years ago with Debussy's La Mer, where Lav Shani really brought our orchestra to, unprecedented heights with this wonderful piece by Debussy, one of the earliest pieces of modernism or French modernism at the beginning of the 20th century.
Okay, that would be wonderful. What a wonderfully triumphant and energetic piece of music.
And that's only the first movement.
Okay.
It sort of builds up towards the third, which is havoc and energy and explosions and this, because he's really describing, Debussy was grew up with the idea of water, of sea, and that's something which appears also in his piano music. And that's one of his orchestral masterpieces where he really celebrates this kind of pointillistic description of scenes. I call it modernism, although people would say that's impressionism, but I think he's already paved the way for Stravinsky to come and for the other true modernists who came directly after him and learned so much from him.
Okay.
Yes, so that's one of the things Lavshni really excels in, this modern classics, and we were so fortunate to do this with him.
Right. So the music students who are in the program, then they have the luck of being able to work towards performances like these. Can you talk a little bit more about the programs and the courses that are on offer through the School of Music?
Okay, I don't want to bore you because we have so many courses, but I'll pick up I'll do a cherry pick. Right. Okay. So, I mentioned, of course, the orchestral instruments because the school in its new format was built or clustered around this idea of orchestral training program. And I just mentioned that, again, through the work with the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra, we manage also to supply them with our players. So actually they have some kind of practicum throughout their studies. The really good ones are allowed to play together with them. Some of them do after this internship.
Okay.
Thanks to the very generous support of the Colton family. There are several internship positions which are very well selected. The best of the best are allowed to play with them. And but I don't want to neglect the other departments. For instance, I did a conducting course of studies in the early 90s. And I'm very proud to say that our conducting department is flourishing. We're trying to give our conductors lots of opportunities. For instance, they conduct not only our school orchestra, but we're also inviting every year another orchestra, just for the sake of the conducting students to do a whole concert of their own. So recently we had the Camerata last year. This year we're going to have the Haifa Symphony Orchestra playing Tchaikovsky Fifth Symphony. So as a conducting student, that's exactly the best placement you could think of.
Okay.
And we also had, in the course of the, let's say, 10 recent years, people coming from abroad to study conducting, which we offer only as a master's degree. Okay. Because in the bachelor degree, conductors study, for instance, together with composers. That's lots of music theory. By the way, that's my field, music theory, musicology. That's what I teach.
Right.
So I'm very fortunate to be able to teach some of the most brilliant young musicians from Israel who learn. I teach what you'd call historical composition. Because we do believe that's our credo at the Tel Aviv University. That's one of the very few composition departments which still believes that you cannot write new things without really knowing the older styles, really getting your skills polished and understand how Mozart and Bach and Chopin wrote their pieces.
Okay.
So that's one of my greatest enjoyments, to just explore with students these old styles and see that they're not old and brittle at all. They're very vivid, and people write in my class, for instance, a set of mazurkas every year, and we perform them too. So that's some things that we do at our music theory department. We have a thriving piano department, and it also connects with us, with the many international students who come to study with our very well-known faculty. So I just brought one excerpt of one of our graduates who is doing exceptionally well. That's Ilya Ovcharenko, a Ukrainian guy, a pianist who is now winning competitions all over the place. I don't even remember, in New York and in Europe. Sal Cortot appeared already. And he's a piano student with Professor Aryeh Vardi, laureate of the Israel Prize, and one of our veteran pianists. He really, I don't know how many generations of pianists he brought up. So I brought an excerpt where Ilya plays short, wonderful sonata by Domenico Scarlatti in E major K20, and that was actually a mock Arthur Rubinstein competition. Because of COVID, they had to cancel the official one. And then my predecessor is also the founder of the music school in its current format, Professor Tomer Lev of the piano department, just initiated a replacement competition. So we just gave some guests and our students the opportunity to play recitals.
Okay.
So let's listen to just a few seconds or a minute of this wonderful Domenico Scarlatti in this crystal clear performance of Ilya Ovcharenko.
All right. I can imagine his fingers dancing around the piano. So you mentioned he's a student from Ukraine then?
Yes.
Okay.
Originally. But now I think he's just traveling around and giving concerts everywhere. He's one of the most, of the biggest successes among our alumni. And we're looking forward. It was a pleasure to have him in our international program for outstanding musicians, which is already celebrating how many years? It started in 2008.
Okay, 2008 you introduced the international. Now I know you have a bachelor's program and a master's program.
That's true.
So which one began in 2008? It was the master's?
Well, both of them actually. The idea was to open just specific tracks. For instance, as I said, composition track. It's so fraught with courses, you can't open it in English as well. You need to have a double system. So we just made it possible for performance to have a bachelor and for practically everybody to have the master's.
Okay.
Also the artist diploma, which is a sort of second, it's not a real second degree. It's something like you do after your bachelor.
Okay.
And we have around at any given point around 40 international students from all over the world, and we were really very happy to bring together. It was very, very tough, but we showed that Russians and Ukrainians can live in the dorms together even.
Okay.
It was difficult for both parties, but sort of music brought them together. They played also chamber music, for instance, together.
Right. The global language.
That's the global language. I think that's the peacemaking language after all. That's the hope. And we have people from Brazil and from the UK sometimes, several Americans, so from Turkey, from everywhere.
Okay.
And that's also a program which is now supported by our patron, after whom we also call our school. That's Joseph Buchmann, the philanthropist, the businessman from Frankfurt, who helped, as I said, Maestro Mehta to found this school in the current format, in this thriving concept. And so the idea is that they get tuition free.
Okay.
And we support them with housing and life expenses as far as we can.
Okay.
So actually I brought with me, we have a very nice brochure. You can find it online. So that's our international program for outstanding musicians, and we're looking forward to welcome people from all over the world, as we have been doing for a while.
So the idea is try to have as much covered so when they're here, they can just focus on the music and...
Exactly.
Okay.
And they're very high level. They're cherry-picked. They have to do very well on their auditions.
Okay.
And yes, and we mainly have really, as I said, several real stars.
Right.
There is another star who just won the International Bartok competition of Hungary. And that's a wonderful violinist. I was lucky enough to teach music theory. She was also a very brilliant theorist, Lilia Pucitari.
Okay.
Her brother also did the program and stayed here as a concertmaster of the IPO. So some of them also just, stay here and become Israelis. But she went back to Europe and she just won this competition. And when she was here, she was part of a very prestigious project, which is the Gertler String Quartet. That's the representative chamber music formation of the music school. They get extra scholarship to be able to concentrate. They work very hard. They rehearse twice a week, and they produce a whole concert program with which they even tour Israel. They play at several points in Israel, sometimes even in former years we were able, before COVID, they even went abroad. I hope we come back to sending them abroad again. Right. So there is a nice, very short excerpt from Schubert's String Quintet, where the Gertler String Quartet, led by Lilia Pucitari, with Marta Sikora playing second violin, Jose Batista Junior, the Brazilian violist, and my Andy, the Israeli cellist. So you see everybody meets together with their mentor. Mentor is Felix Nemirovsky, a cellist of the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra, who trains them, and here he performs together with them. And that's the second movement, the beginning of the second movement, the celestial second movement, which Arthur Rubinstein actually wanted to be played in his funeral of Schubert's String Quintet.
Okay. That was absolutely beautiful.
You can understand why Arthur Rubinstein wanted exactly this movement to be played on his...
I do. I do understand that you have a pretty amazing lineup of performances coming up for the 2023-2024 season. So I'd love to hear about some of the future music performances that will be happening here.
That's grand. Yes, sure. Well, it's actually our 20th season.
Right.
So this subscription concert named after Yechiel Ben-Zvi, who actually initiated it. He was part of the administration of the entire Tel Aviv University, and also donated a lot towards installing this concert series. We're celebrating this 20th season. This endeavor was also founded by Tomer Lev, who founded the school. It was more or less simultaneously, just a few years before the school was formed in its current format. And, well, I'm just waving here in front of the camera our new booklet. The name of the concert season is Tzlilim Tzlulim, Crystal Clear Sounds, because we all have the feeling of a need of clarity, a need of purity, and the power of music to bring this back into our lives. And, well, that's our concert schedule. We have actually 6 series. There is the orchestral series where our PMSM Symphony Orchestra is playing. There is a vocal I'll come back to this in a second. There is the piano series directed by Professor Tomer Lev, and chamber directed by Asaf Zohar and Arnon Erez. Both of them are pianists in our piano faculty. There is a new Baroque series I was very lucky to install last year together with a colleague of mine. We studied together here in the 90s, Kati Debreceni. She's doing an amazing career as a Baroque violinist in London. She actually played at Charles' coronation with her orchestra. That's the English Baroque soloists. It's one of the most important Baroque orchestras around the world. And she's the leader, but she also has a warm place for Israel, for her music academy where she studied. So I was able and very happy to bring her back to teach with us and start a pilot Baroque program, which is, it's mainstream all around the world, what you call historically informed performance and playing on Baroque, on period instruments. And now we're starting with, just last season we started with this. So we have 3 concerts with her upcoming in this season. We have a new collaboration. You spoke about peaks and special events. So we're celebrating a second season of collaborating with the Israel contemporary players. They're coming to play, canonical repertoire of really, truly modern music created, let's say, in the space of the last 50 years, and the compositions of our music students, of our composition students. And that's an incredible, it's such a wonderful symbiosis to bring these things together. Mm-hmm. And we have special concerts, including an homage to Jonathan Geffen, who passed away just recently, with his with settings to music of his poems for children and everything. So it's going to be a very, very rich, a very, very exciting concert season. And we're looking forward, as I said, the peak of the orchestral program will be in April with Lav Shani at the Bronfman Auditorium with the gala concert.
Okay, wonderful. Now, we've talked a fair bit about the School of Music, and usually I like to ask a few questions about the person in front of me too. So I know you are a composer, but you also work on music theory. So can you talk a little bit about your own work and what inspires you, and even working on the two, because they can be disparate, but they come together in different ways as well, theory and composition.
Definitely, right. So as a music researcher, I started working when I was in Berlin already, and teaching, conducting, and doing concerts. Concentrating on Mozart's music. So as you mentioned before, my main theme was the treatment of keys by Mozart. And I suddenly found a way that the keys in Mozart are really keys to his music. So the way he writes in D major or in E flat major, it's totally different. And not just because it's transposed, because for layman it would sound the same. Okay. But for Mozart, it would be two worlds, and he would compose completely different music. And this also has to do something to do with the ideas of key characteristics of the 18th century, but I found some very specific traits of this in Mozart. So I went, I would say one branch of my creative activity is just getting inspiration, from what I research into. As you mentioned, I did completion of several Mozart fragments. I'm going to present something also in a concert in the chamber music series next year. And my recent project was actually trying to write a whole piano concerto in Mozart style. Okay, it's ambitious. It's very ambitious. I'm not sure it's not Mozart in the end, but it's sort of my adventure. Researching and hearing into his music and sort of trying to get out of this something which is also my own and something personal. So I just brought 30 seconds of a teaser. We might wish to listen to this.
Great.
So that was just a snippet of the second and the third movement, only the themes. As I said, a teaser.
And you mentioned you're performing next year then?
No, another thing, something that is a Fantasia in F minor.
Okay.
Mozart left, incredibly enough, over 150 unfinished works, fragments.
Okay.
The best known is, of course, the Requiem, which he didn't finish for a very simple reason. He just died in the middle.
Right.
But he envisioned even the end of it. We know that he actually knew how it's going to end, but he never got there.
Well, I kind of love the idea of music compositions that are unfinished and musicians today taking them up and, continuing this conversation, this musical conversation.
Right. I think that makes them so much, it's a different way to treat music. It's not just like a law you get, from above. It's something that you're invited to look into and communicate with.
Right.
So I think much of my music is actually dialogue with the music of the past. It's very important to me. Of course, that's not the way my music normally sounds. I don't write things just in style of, but I did some things also, I'd call it a postmodern style, where I sort of, we are in the advantage of having all the music in the world, well, not all of it, but much of the music of the past just at the tip of our fingers.
Right.
And I think that more than inventing the wheel anew, just inventing a whole new style, my urge is sort of making this different persona communicate with one another. So my music, my own one, is very chaotic, and it brings people from the Baroque and people from the classical and people from the modern time just to speak together.
It really is a conversation. Definitely.
I think it is. Music is in a way a language, of course, in a very different way. But and this is something that I don't even want to research into, because when you research something, what I did with Mozart, you actually understand things, and then you sort of know the bottom line of it.
Right.
And when you try to create things, you never want to know the bottom line.
Right.
You want to get confused. So
you like to enter into the world and see what your reactions are.
Exactly. So that's my strategy.
Well, thank you very much, Uri, for that wonderful musical conversation that we had. I learned a lot about the School of Music and about your own work, too.
Thanks so much, Anna. It has been fun.